Hello viewers, welcome to Newsweek South Asia, a program that talks about breeding of terrorism and its impact on South Asian nations. Let's begin with the headlines first. Pakistan's ISI supporting Khalistani Kashmir terrorists to create instability in India. Indian security forces eliminate Pak-backed terrorists in Kashmir. An Afghan female journalist shot dead by Islamic State gunmen. Pakistan's inter-services intelligence has been trying to create instability in India's Punjab and Jammu and Kashmir by supporting Khalistani separatists and terrorists in Kashmir. A state within a state, Pakistan's notorious secret agency is trying to act as a bridge between Khalistan movement and Kashmir-based terror outfits through narco-terrorism. This modus operandi was exposed with the arrest of 5 suspected terrorists in capital New Delhi. A report.
For decades now, Pakistan has been creating unrest and instability in India's Punjab and Jammu and Kashmir by promoting separatism and terrorism. In its latest modus operandi, Pakistan's secret agency, the ISI, is trying to bring together Khalistani Kashmiri terrorists to create uproar in India. This has been exposed with the recent arrest of 5 suspected terrorists in capital New Delhi. It unearthed a nexus involving Pakistan's ISI, pro-Khalistan radicals, Hizbul Mujahideen and those involved in narco-terrorism. 2 of the 5 arrested by Delhi police is suspected to be linked with the killing of Balwinder Singh Bhikhwind, a Shaurya Chakra awardee who had fought against terrorism in Punjab. The other 3 arrested, all residents of Kashmir, are linked to Hizbul Mujahideen. Police said that inter-services intelligence is acting as glue between pro-Khalistani separatists and Kashmiri terrorists.
खालिस्तानी जो ऑपरेटिव्स हैं मतलब ऐसा ही खालिस्तान का प्रोपेगेंडा चला के कुछ लोगों को सामने किए हुए हैं वो लोग कश्मीर के कुछ ऑपरेटिव्स के साथ मिल गए हैं और इसी सिलसिले में पीछे एक टारगेट किलिंग भी हुई थी पंजाब में जहां पर बलविंदर सिंह संधू साहब मारे गए थे जो शौर्य चक्र अवार्डी थे अक्टूबर में उनकी किलिंग हुई थी। इसी ऑपरेशन में आज सुबह 5 लोगों को गिरफ्तार किया गया है। 5 लोगों में 3 कश्मीर बेस्ड हैं, 2 पंजाब बेस्ड हैं। ये 2 जो हैं ये वही हैं जो बलविंदर सिंह संधू के मर्डर में शामिल थे और जो कश्मीरीज थे ये इनको फंडिंग करने आए हुए थे।
In June this year, Indian intelligence agencies had already warned the government of pro-Khalistan activities in the country, backed by Pakistan's ISI and the Band 6 for Justice group. In the same month, Delhi Police Special Cell had busted a module of Khalistan Liberation Front by arresting 3 hardcore supporters of Khalistan movement who were planning to execute targeted killings in several states of northern India. The ISI and SFJ have been advocating secessionist and pro-Khalistan activities in India for long, following which the Ministry of Home Affairs in July last year banned the SFJ for advocating Referendum 2020, an online campaign for Khalistan which seeks a separate homeland for Sikhs. While several Pakistan ISI chiefs in the past have been vocal supporters of the Khalistan movement, the Pakistani deep state seems to have now embarked on the K2, Kashmir and Khalistan strategy with newfound hate. A part of this hatred stems from the fact that diplomatically Pakistan has failed to gather any global momentum against India. The recent controversial tweet by Pakistan's blundering minister Fawad Chaudhry in support of Punjabi farmers is also being seen from the perspective of intensifying the secessionist movement in India.
The fact that we have actually apprehended 5 terrorists indicates the fact that the movement is alive and that the danger and the threat is there. However, at the same time, it must be said, the Indian intelligence is on top of the situation, which also means that we arrested these 5 people before they could carry out any damage. So concerns remain. How they are to be addressed, I think, is already being done by the Indian security forces, by the political establishment and by the intelligence agencies. But it is going to be a long drawn out battle, and I feel the battle lines are drawn, and we will see as to how it goes from here.
Indian security agencies have in recent months seen increased activity along the international border in Punjab, with the delivery of drugs and ammunition both increasing and the use of drones to make such deliveries possible across the border. Agencies have also found that the most prominent Khalistan websites of Sikhs for Justice are being hosted from a server based in Karachi, Pakistan. On various occasions, the Band 6 for Justice has made automated phone calls issuing threats to Indian journalists and commentators, asking them to mend their ways or face consequences, and Pakistan Army and ISI have always exploited these Khalistanis for money-making through drug trafficking. Khalistani sympathizers based in India are assisting them in amplifying their disinformation campaigns, but because of a strong crackdown on Khalistani forces by Indian agencies and police, Pakistan's fantasy to revive the Khalistan movement is not happening.
Peace in Jammu and Kashmir territory remains volatile due to consistent Pakistan-aided terror activities in the region. However, India remains committed to fighting all its tricks to stop its western neighbor from inciting terror in the valley. Recently, proactive Indian forces eliminated 3 terrorists in Jammu Kashmir's Pulwama area. And it's not a one-off breakthrough, but the forces have been successful in busting all the nefarious anti-India plots hatched in the corridors of Islamabad and Rawalpindi. A report.
The Indian Army, Paramilitary, Central Reserve Police Force and Jammu and Kashmir Police are jointly carrying out series of operations to uproot the Pakistan-established network of terrorism from the Kashmir Valley. Continuing with the spate of encounters that have taken place in the valley recently, Indian Army neutralized 3 terrorists belonging to Pakistan-backed Al-Badr in Jammu Kashmir's Pulwama this week. Based on specific inputs, a search operation was launched by the security forces, during which the terrorists opened fire at the soldiers.
कल रात में पुलवामा पुलिस को इत्तला मिली थी कि 2 से 3 मिलिटेंट छिपे हुए हैं टिक्कन विलेज में. उसके बाद आर्मी पुलिस सीआरपी मिलकर कॉर्डन डाल लिया और अर्ली मॉर्निंग में जब सर्च करना शुरू हुआ तो मिलिटेंट अंधाधुंध फायर कर दिया, जिसमें घर वाला था एक सिविलियन, उसके पाँव में गोली लगा, उसका हालत ठीक है. और इनकाउंटर के दौरान 3 टेररिस्ट मारे गए. तीनों लोकल टेररिस्ट हैं और अलबदर से ताल्लुक़ रखते हैं.
After a year of abrogation of Article 370 from Jammu and Kashmir, it has seen significant development and relative peace as democracy is thriving in the region. However, frustrated Pakistan continues to use its proxies to harm the flourishing grassroots democracy and development in Jammu and Kashmir. During the ongoing District Development Council elections in Kashmir, Pakistan-sponsored terrorists have targeted Indian security forces, civilians as well as candidates. Pakistan's attempt to target the DDC elections is based on fear that peaceful participatory election in Jammu and Kashmir can be the most powerful demonstration of prosperous democracy. The successful conduct of the elections and the high voter turnout in Jammu and Kashmir are conveying the clear message to everyone, including Pakistan, that people of Jammu and Kashmir continue to favor democratic ways as they had done in 1947, when they opted for a democratic India.
Pakistan always tried to disrupt peaceful democratic process in Kashmir. It did the same during Panchayat Raj elections and it's doing the same thing during DDC elections. Pakistan believes in hybrid warfare. Pakistan knows that in battlefield it cannot face Indian army. So like a coward nation, like a coward army, it resorts to backstage stabbing with regard to India. The aim of Pakistan is to drive fear in the minds of people of Kashmir, try to show that Indian government cannot protect Kashmiris, they are only safe with Pakistan, influence local Muslim youths to support and espouse the case of Pakistan, lower the morale of Indian army and security forces, divert attention of Indian army from protecting border to protecting Kashmiris, keep issue internationalized so that issue remains hot at international fora and indirectly help China.
Pakistan is not only instigating violence in the Kashmir Valley, but is continuously violating ceasefire at the line of control. It is a compulsive way used by Pakistan Army to infiltrate terrorists into India from across the border. To achieve its nefarious agendas, Pakistan does not even shy away from hurting the innocent civilians of Jammu and Kashmir. Recently, 3 civilians were injured in a grenade attack by Pakistan-backed terrorists in Baramulla district of Kashmir. The injured were taken to hospital in Srinagar.
जब मैं सुबह है ना दुकान छोड़ने आया था, मैंने दुकान छोड़ा, 9:30 बजे ये वाक़ा हो गया। सीआरपी गाड़ी एक थी उधर खड़ी, उधर ही ये ग्रेनेड हो गया।
While the situation in Jammu and Kashmir is returning back to normalcy, Islamabad has intensified its efforts at increasing the strength of terrorists in launchpads along the line of control to create havoc in the region. Such consistent attempts of Pakistan at fomenting trouble and breaching harmony in an otherwise peaceful Kashmir reek of its duplicity.
An expected spell of reprieve in war-torn Afghanistan has suffered a major setback as the country continues to remain a target of terrorists. While at one side, Afghan security forces are being targeted on a daily basis, journalists and media professionals too have come under the radar of terrorists. Recently, a female television journalist and women's rights activist was shot and killed in Afghanistan's Nangarhar province by Islamic State. This escalating rate of violence has once again raised the concerns regarding the vulnerable situation of journalists and women in Afghanistan amidst the withdrawal of foreign troops from the country. A report.
Malalai Maiwand, a journalist in the eastern province of Nangarhar, was on her way to work in Jalalabad when Islamic State's gunmen opened fire on her vehicle. Her driver Muhammad Tahir was also killed. Maiwand was also a civil society activist who advocated for the rights of Afghan women and children. She was not the first in her family to be targeted. 5 years ago, her mother, who was also an activist, was killed by unknown gunmen. The area has been a hotbed of terrorist activity, most notably involving Islamic State, which issued its claim of responsibility via its Telegram communications channel, calling her a pro-regime journalist. The Afghan government, NATO, and other diplomatic missions based in Kabul condemned such growing attacks on journalists and activists.
او ډیر واضح الفاظ او کلماتو کې می د امنیتي ارګانونو نه غوښتي دي چې په هر قیمت کې قاتل براته پیدا کړي، په هر قیمت کې قاتل په سبب قدم اخلي او قاتل به پیدا کړي، د قانون منګولو ته بسپارل کېږي، نو خبرې نه وکړي.
The murder of Maiwand comes just weeks after Radio Liberty reporter Elias Dai was killed in a car bomb attack in Lashkargah. A well-known former television presenter Yamasia Walsh was also killed last month, along with 2 others, when a bomb attached to his car exploded near his home in Kabul. Earlier, Sabah Seher, one of Afghanistan's first female directors, was shot in Kabul. However, she survived the attack. These incidents are indicative of a growing trend of intense violence against journalists in the country, threatening the right to freedom of media and expression.
As the Taliban grows in power, among the threats that they see against them, which is mobilizing Afghan society against them, happens to be the journalists. And therefore, they have every incentive to get rid of journalists. And in fact, Taliban has never made any secret of their antipathy towards journalism and journalists. So yes, I do expect when the Taliban come to power, journalists will have a very bad time. I think journalism will come to an end.
Life for women in Afghanistan has never been easy. But being a woman and choosing to work as a journalist in an environment where media workers are already targeted for their profession make them more vulnerable. The Taliban's ultra-hardline rule was marked by oppressive laws for women up until the group was toppled after the 2001 US-led invasion of Afghanistan. There are apprehensions about a possible reversal of progress on women's rights over the last 2 decades if the Taliban return to any sort of power with the withdrawal of foreign troops from the country.
Will women's rights be affected if the Taliban comes back to power? The answer is yes. Remember, if you look at any fundamentalist regime, one of the principal target groups, the groups they tend to target, is the women. Why? Understandable reasons. Fundamentalism means that you have basically let go of progressive values. You want to silence 50% of the population, in a sense set an example so that the other 50% is also suitably cowed down. This is how fundamentalists operate. Look at any fundamentalist regime in the world, women are always second-class citizens. So under those circumstances, it is only likely when the Taliban comes to power, women will be sidelined.
The Taliban severely restricted women's rights when they ruled Afghanistan, and although they have promised that women will be allowed their rights under Islamic law, they have declined to specify what that would mean in practice. Women in Afghanistan do not want to go back to the terms of Taliban rule, to the floggings and banishment from public life. However, their hopes are slowly fading away in the light of terror attacks by the Islamic State and the Taliban.
Bangladesh is going to celebrate its Victory Day on December 16. This day commemorates the victory of the Allied Forces High Command over the Pakistani forces in the 1971 Bangladesh Liberation War. But the important question arising today is that at this critical point, does Bangladesh really deserve a grand celebration of liberation? Religious extremists have come to be a prominent political force in the country. A country that had been built upon the promise of secularism has now closely and fatally embraced religion. A report.
In April this year, Bangladeshi authorities executed Abdul Majid, a former military captain who had publicly announced his involvement in the assassination of country's independence leader Sheikh Mujibur Rahman. After Majid's arrest in Dhaka, Home Minister Asaduzzaman Khan said that the arrest was the biggest gift for Bangladesh in 2020. The Bangladesh government now realizes that the country can't get the biggest gift until all those extremist forces involved in the killing of Sheikh Mujibur Rahman's ideology are eliminated from Bangladeshi society. For a country where bloggers are being killed and facing threats from both state and non-state actors merely for criticizing Islamic fundamentalists, there is a challenging and long way to go. The assassination of Bangladeshi bloggers in the past have opened a new front between the values of a syncretic, secular, humanistic Bangladeshi culture against a rigid worldview incapable of allowing difference to coexist. These murders have been all the more troubling given Bangladesh's comparative moderation and its well-known economic and development successes.
The assault on them is really an assault on Bangabandhu and its value itself. And as we know that, Bangabandhu itself was, mercilessly murdered. So it is very unfortunate that the bloggers have also been, given, dealt with similar, death threats, and some of them have been mercilessly, butchered in Bangladesh. So we want justice for their friends and families, and we hope that the perpetrators will be brought to book.
The lack of a clear state policy when it comes to secularism has helped accelerate the rise of fundamentalism, extremism, and anti-West sentiments in Bangladesh. Since independence, Islamist parties in Bangladesh have been trying to hijack nation's politics. The most influential Islamic party is Jamaat-e-Islami, whose name means Islamic gathering. Despite its history of being an active anti-liberation force in Bangladesh during its liberation war, it enjoyed political power through its alliance with both of the major political parties, the Awami League and the Bangladesh Nationalist Party, at different periods of time. Some hardline Islamists were also sentenced to death by a special Bangladeshi tribunal for committing crimes against humanity and siding with the Pakistani troops in carrying out the genocide during the Liberation War in 1971. Bangladesh's parliamentary system requires mainstream parties to ally with smaller ones to gain the majority necessary for forming a government. Because of this, major political parties in Bangladesh have at different times relied on alliances with Jamaat to secure a parliamentary majority.
Present day Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina is leading Bangladesh in the right direction to make sure that the vision and the dreams of Sheikh Mujib are realized. However, her opponents are hand in glove with the deep state and its collaborators. So it is a grave threat not only to the people of Bangladesh but to the entire neighborhood and with global repercussions.
When Bangladesh became independent from Pakistan in 1971, secularism was one of the new country's founding principles. It soon came under siege when the dictator Hussain Muhammad Irshad declared Islam as the state religion. Since then only, the phenomenon of radicalization has notoriously impacted the Bangladeshi society, and experts believe there is an imminent need to tackle this challenge. Any instability in Bangladesh will trigger instability in its neighboring India, as the two countries share an over 4,000-kilometer long boundary. Stability of Bangladesh is imperative for the entire South Asia region as well as for economic growth that Bangladesh has achieved.
And with that, we come to the end of this edition of Newsweek South Asia. We'll be back next week with more news, views and analysis from the subcontinent. Meanwhile, do keep writing to us at nwsa@nin.com. This is Shreya Savijay signing off on the behalf of entire production team of Newsweek South Asia. Goodbye and take care.